Thank you. Welcome to West Banks Municipal Water District Water Policy and Legislation Committee. Do we have everyone there, Mr. General Manager?
I'm happy to go through roll call. Director Don Deere.
Here.
Chairwoman Gloria Gray.
Here.
Director Scott Houston. Director Harold Williams.
Here.
Director Desi Alvarez. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Yes. I think, could you go to the second item on the list, Mr. General Manager, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. The next item is public comment, and we have not received any requests for public comment, though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. If there are any guests here that are attending virtually that would like to make public comment, please indicate so by raising your virtual hand. And Madam Chair, I do not see any requests for public comment.
All right, the next item, please.
Madam Chair, we do not have any presentations, nor do we have any action calendar items, which would bring us to item 6, our information calendar.
Okay, please, would you go to that item, please?
Happy to do so. The first item that we have is item 6A. It's our state federal legislative update for October 2023. And for this presentation, we have Matt Bay, our Manager of Water Policy and Resources Development.
Thank you, EJ, and good afternoon, directors. I'm now on page 3 of the agenda packet. And I will begin with the state legislative update. So please refer to page 5 of the packet where the PML Pappas and Associates report begins. While the next several weeks of the holidays usually signals somewhat of a slowdown in the legislature, with this being the second year of a 2-year legislative session, we expect things to quickly ramp back up starting in January. There's a number of major issues that will come to the forefront in 2024, including a statewide climate bond, water rights, conservation regulations, tax and fee authority, water supply targets, storage, recharge, and a host of others. I can assure you that a lot of behind the scenes discussions are taking place right now during this slow time. And West Basin figures to be very busy and engaged on state issues next year. We now have NPA with a 2-year agreement that starts on January 1st. So we'll be working very closely with them. And this leads me to my first item here, which is to talk about our winter/spring 2024 Sacramento advocacy trip. Staff is already working closely with NPA to begin planning the trip. And it's our goal to get something on the books as soon as we can so that NPA can start putting together meeting invites to our various delegation offices, along with any other administrative offices or stakeholders that we might want to meet with when we're in Sacramento. On the recommendation of NPA, we're looking at either mid to late February or the first week in March to make our visit. This will be after bills have been introduced in the session, but before the committee season really gets going. And so the availability of our delegation members should be a bit better at that time. NPA has proposed some initial dates for us to consider. And so I'd like to go ahead and share those with you now so that you can let our team know what works best for any of you who would like to join the group on that visit. NPA is envisioning 1 full day of meetings, but like last year, we may also want to consider an extra half day to hold additional meetings if needed. Please note that these are all 2-day windows that I'm about to share here that fall on a Tuesday and Wednesday. So the dates that we have under consideration are February 13th and 14th, the Tuesday, Wednesday, February 27th and 28th, also Tuesday, Wednesday, and then March 5th and 6th, again, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're happy to take any feedback from the directors who are on this meeting at this time, or if you'd like to work with board services over the next couple of weeks to figure out what works best for your schedules, that would be great too. The sooner we can get these dates set, the sooner we can put out these meeting invites and get onto our delegations calendars. So with that said, are there any questions or feedback about our Sacramento trip and the dates that we have offered?
Thank you, Matt. Director Deere and Director Williams, any Any comments? I go to Director Deere. Any comments about it right now?
Not right now,
Or
thanks.
preference? What about preference and date?
What did you say?
What about
No
preference of
preference and
dates?
date.
Oh, none at this time.
Director Williams?
Ditto.
Okay. My feedback would be March. What was the date in March again?
Was March 5th and March 6th.
Okay, March would be a better time frame, I believe, for me. If I can go, but just a suggestion.
Okay, thank you, Director Gray, for that input. And
Thank you,
we
Matt.
will also follow up with the other directors. Okay. All right, then it's okay. I'll go ahead and move on, Director Gray. Okay, so moving on to other updates, I wanted to mention that staff will continue to work with our lobbyist NPA, water
Sorry, the
reuse,
call
aqua.
dropped.
Oh, okay. Am I okay to go on, Director Gray?
I'm back.
Okay, I'll go ahead and move on.
Thank you.
We're working with NPA, water reuse, aqua, Metropolitan, and others to advance our priorities for the 2024 climate bond, the proposed climate bond. West Basin has engaged with these coalitions members, and we've been successful at getting some language into their letters to the legislature that reflects the unique needs of West Basin, but this work is by no means done. We're also engaging with the office of one of the authors of one of the climate bonds, Senator Ben Allen, to continue stressing the need for not only additional funding for recycled water, but also for recycled water, specifically projects that ensure the continued production of existing recycled water supplies in the midst of declining wastewater flows and quality. That's something that's very important to us. So we'll be working with the general manager to get additional meetings with the senator's office. On the topic of workforce development, I know this is another priority issue for the directors. West Basin continues to work with NPA to determine the future of any legislation that might go forward in 2024. If you'll recall, AB 735 by Assemblymember Berman was held in appropriations earlier this year due to its cost. This was a bill that we had been in support of. And through the work of NPA, West Basin has reached out to the author's office, as well as to Aqua and CMUA, to see if the bill might be brought back next year. So far at this time, it does not look like that will be the case, as the costs of the proposed bill, will continue to hurt its chances of passing. We are continuing to research the primary cost drivers of the bill, and we'll evaluate whether there are any, there's any possibility of bringing a version back of the bill, different version back with reduced costs that would make it more palatable to the legislature. So if there is a way to do that, West Basin will be involved in helping to move the measure forward. But for now, there's still a lot of uncertainty with this specific workforce development legislation. But more updates to come on that. Also wanted to mention that NPA did extend an offer to the new Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas to take a tour of the West Basin Edward C. Little facility. I don't believe anything has been scheduled as of yet, but I'll continue to check in with NPA to see if anything changes in that regard in the next month or so. Another update to share with this committee is not a state issue so much as a local issue. But the general manager and I did meet with staff from the city of West Hollywood recently to discuss partnership opportunities relating to a stormwater capture project that they're currently designing. It's called the Sky Sanctuaries Project, and it's intended to be built ahead of the 2028 Olympics. The project would be designed to capture stormwater, as well as to provide a host of other community benefits. West Basin offered to work with the city to identify conservation rebates that the city could utilize as part of the project, including grass removal and cistern storage. So as West Hollywood weighs its options, the project's also currently being considered for funding by the Central Santa Monica Bay Watershed Area Steering Committee, which West Basin is a part of, so we'll continue to monitor the progress of this project. Under the leadership of this board and the general manager, it's our goal to seek out other partnership opportunities with not only our retail customers, but all of our cities and unincorporated areas that can benefit their residents while furthering the objectives of our organization. So we'll continue to do that work out in the community. Another area where our team's doing a lot of work is in helping educate and assist our retailers with the upcoming conservation framework requirement that starts next year. I'll provide this update at the PI committee as well, but I wanted to let the directors know that West Basin held a retailer workshop on November 8th on the topic of the state's conservation framework, which relates to planning and complying with upcoming water use objectives for urban retail water providers. This is a very important topic that we've touched on in previous committees, and it's becoming more of a priority issue as we move into 2024. The great news is that we had participation from one or more representatives from each of our retailers. And that was really our primary goal for this workshop, was to get at least one person from each agency. So we were happy to achieve that goal. The other goals that we had for this workshop were to educate our retailers about the pending regulations, to provide them with some initial resources, and to let them know that we'll be setting up one-on-one meetings with each of them and their organizations in the coming months to see how West Basin can support them with future programs or other resources. Now, ultimately, retailers will be responsible for meeting the requirements. That won't be a West Basin requirement. It's only retailers. But we want to provide assistance and guidance wherever we can. So this is something that we're evaluating very closely, especially with regard to our commercial, industrial sectors. There's a whole host of new performance measures that water providers will have to meet with their CII customers, and that could really impact the programs that we might want to offer to our retailers. The final regs won't be adopted until next summer, but the first water report is due on January 1st next year. So retailers are working to meet that initial deadline. The state did host a workshop of their own last Friday, and we encouraged all of our retailers to attend. And while I was on the meeting, I noticed that several of our retailers were on the call, which was great to see. And then also just today, we found out that the California Data Collaborative has offered to pre-fill out all of the retailers' water reports for next year. They just have to kind of, I think, opt into that. So that's a really good service. I already sent out an email to our retailers letting them know about that so they could opt in. Could save them a lot of work over the next month or two. More information on this topic will be presented at future committee meetings, so I'll be sure to bring that to you. A couple of other quick items. So we have been contacted by some of our cities regarding both non-functional turf and artificial turf laws. This is something that we occasionally talk with our retailers about in other cities. So with the passage of legislation this year, cities are now allowed to ban the installation of artificial turf, while they can no longer ban the installation of drought-tolerant landscaping. So this is something that we're educating them about, and our staff is really good about getting back to any cities or retailers that have questions about those issues. Also in early November, Governor Newsom announced he is streamlining some environmental review for the Sites Reservoir project. You might be familiar with that project. It's a big new reservoir that would be built up in the central part or northern part of the state. It'd be a major source of water storage, and it's a project that's supported by Metropolitan and much of the water industry at large. I think there'll certainly continue to be some headbutting between environmental NGOs and the governor on this issue. But I think from our perspective, it's good to see some progress here by Governor Newsom. For additional information on state legislative affairs, please feel free to read through the NPA monthly report and bill tracker list. And that concludes my state report. I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have before I move on to the federal legislative update.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Are there any questions?
No, thank you.
All right, then I will move on. I'm now on page 32 of the agenda packet, which is where the Van Scoyoc Associates monthly report begins. And as with the state update, I wanted to start off by providing some initial dates for you to consider for our spring 2024 Washington, D.C. advocacy trip. These dates would fall on weeks where Congress is scheduled to be working from the Capitol and not their home district. And there's 2 weeks that VSA has given us that could work. You may recall that last year we scheduled our trip for a different week than Water Week, which is when a lot of the other water organizations fly in for their meetings. And so we chose to go a different week so that we might not have as much competition for meetings during that week. So the two weeks to consider, the first one would be the week of April 15th. And then the second date to consider would be the week of April 29th. So with that said, there's just the two dates right now that we're putting out there. So is there any preference of the directors to schedule the DC visit for either the week of April 15th or April 29th?
Not for me. I'm pretty flexible at that time.
Are there any questions? Hello?
Yes, Director
Can you hear
Gray?
me? Yes,
Yes, we can.
sorry. Okay. Are we done with the report or?
Madam Chair, we were just mentioning potential dates for a Washington DC trip in 2024. Just to get a feel for where the directors are. Obviously, we can carry this conversation on offline. We can work through board services to find dates, but we were just throwing them out there. We've been working with BSA, our federal lobbyists, to see about potential dates. And Matt, if you want to repeat those real quick.
Yeah, Madam Chair, the two dates are the week of April 15th and the week of April 29th.
Okay, probably the latter part of April, but any date probably. Thank you. Does the rest of the directors, does you have any comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm pretty flexible, so whatever you come up with, I'll be there.
Thank you. Matt, go on.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. I also wanted to mention that on November 1st, West Basin hosted two staff representatives from Congressman Adam Schiff's office at the Edward C. Little facility. Staff and Director Houston presented an overview of the district and provided a tour of the ECL facility. The congressional staff have indicated that Congressman Schiff is very interested in learning more about water issues, recently. And you probably know that Congressman Schiff is currently one of three early frontrunners for the Senate seat that was vacated by the passing of Dianne Feinstein. And so it was good to meet with his staff and give them some updates on West Basin. On a related topic, Senator LaFonza Butler, who was appointed to fill Feinstein's vacated seat, announced she would not be seeking a full Senate term, making her what looks to be a temporary gatekeeper while the 2024 election plays out. Of course, things can change, but that seems to be the kind of the picture for now. In other updates, President Biden has signed yet another congressionally passed continuing resolution that'll keep the federal government funded through early 2024. Congress had been faced with a November 17th funding deadline, at which time federal programs could have, been temporarily shut down. But with the short-term funding measure in place, Congress will now have a couple of months to negotiate a full package of appropriations bills. Also wanted to mention that Senator Alex Padilla was recently appointed to the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, which has oversight over the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, among other agencies. And since he also serves on the Environment and Public Works Committee, this new appointment for him really establishes him as California's primary water advocate, if not in the Senate, then, or if not in Congress, then at least for the Senate, and kind of taking up the mantle from Senator Feinstein before him. So in a display of some of the early leadership on his water issues, Senator Padilla's office indicated that he'll be introducing legislation to establish a permanent federal program to assist low-income households in paying arrearages for drinking or wastewater services. An initial draft of that legislation was shared with VSA and West Basin. And more information will be presented on that legislation once it's officially introduced. But the measure will essentially create a federal-based, state-administered funding program, which would ultimately be run by EPA and would build upon the temporary assistance program that was initiated during the COVID pandemic. While the introduction of this bill is notable, it may face tough sledding in a Congress that is politically split and quite often at odds. And speaking of a polarized Congress, on October 25th, you probably know this, the House elected a new Speaker of the House, voting for Mike Johnson, a Republican from Louisiana, and he follows the speakership of Kevin McCarthy from Bakersfield, who was voted out on October 3rd. There's a great summary in the board packet that starts on page 34, but I wanted to note that the Senate Committee on the Environment and Public Works held a hearing on clean water infrastructure assistance. So among the issues discussed was the challenges faced by underserved communities, how to make state revolving funds more accessible to those communities, and how to incentivize more people to pursue water management careers, so workforce development. Several senators and witnesses there during the hearing expressed support for resources and programs that would help steer folks into the water industry, but they all agreed that implementing effective programs that recruit and retain workers will remain a challenge. And then lastly, U.S. Bureau of Rec has recently released guidelines for a couple of new grant opportunities that apply to water conservation programs. We're reviewing and evaluating these opportunities, which will have application deadlines in the next couple of months. We currently have a USBR grant for our grass replacement program, and that's definitely an area that we'll consider for the new grant. So as we move into the new year and with the new agreement with BSA in place, we'll be working very closely with their team to continue to represent our interests in Washington, D.C. And that concludes my federal update. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions?
No, thank you.
Don?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. The next item, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. The next item is item 6B. It's our monthly Metropolitan Water District Program update. And for this presentation, we have Tammy Hurley-High, our Water Policy and Resources Analyst 2.
So this report summarizes recent activities at Metropolitan that include Colorado River Operation Guideline Process, Pure Water Cost Recovery Alternatives, Water System Operations, Future Supply Action Program, Climate Adaptation Master Plan, future board items, and a conclusion with a look of the water supply conditions. So please feel free to ask any questions or provide comments you may have at any time as I provide this report. To provide an overview on these areas, I have included presentation slides on the board memo, and they begin on page 56 of the committee packet. So first, taking a look at the Colorado River Resources Post 2026 guidelines process. This process is starting because the 2007 interim guideline for the Colorado River operations will expire in 2026. And this slide shows a timeline of activities. So earlier this year in June, Reclamation started the environmental impact statement process to begin developing these guidelines. There was a public comment period in which Metropolitan submitted a joint comment letter along with the Southern Nevada Water Authority and Central Arizona Water Conservation District. So last month in October, Reclamation issued the scoping report for the post 2026 operational guidelines. The next steps in this process will be to develop alternatives that Reclamation can analyze. And the 7 Colorado River Basin states intend to develop a consensus alternative. The completed draft environmental impact statement is anticipated to be released by the end of 2024. And Reclamation anticipates a final environmental impact statement will be available in the fall of 2025, followed by a record of decision in early 2026. So next month, specifically on December 5th, Metropolitan will bring more information to the Board of Directors regarding development to seek their input and the next step in developing a proposed consensus alternative. So we can move to the next item regarding Pure Water Southern California, the project and the cost recovery alternative. So last month during Metropolitan Finance Committee, this information was provided regarding options for the financing of the Pure Water project. And this was a first look as to what the financing options could be. And there were five alternative options that were presented, three of which their consultant, Rob Kellis, has provided. And then also Metropolitan staff proposed two options. And that's what we see here on this slide. So during the committee meeting, there were discussion among the members about regional use of water from this particular project and how the cost would be distributed to participating parties. So Metropolitan staff will bring an update on the project cost estimate to the Pure Water Subcommittee. And this is scheduled for next week on Tuesday, November 28th at 9:30 to continue this discussion and review. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit about water system operation. The pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe reliability program. As you know, this program is designed to enhance reliability of Metropolitan's water distribution system and to reduce the risk of emergency repairs that could be costly. So this is a regional multi-year planned rehabilitation program to install steel lining. And a portion of Metropolitan's second lower feeder is planned to be relined during the months of December through April 2024. And through West Basin Service Area, Reach 3B of the Sepulveda feeder goes through the cities of Lomita, Los Angeles, and Torrance. So in preparation for the construction project, a temporary bypass line around the Palos Verdes Reservoir was put into place to ensure uninterrupted water deliveries. So our operations team here at West Basin and Frank have been working closely with Metropolitan's engineering project managers related to that bypass line. So I just wanted to make you aware that they've been, really working closely on a lot of the specifics. During the rehabilitation process of relining Reach 3B, this will include service connection for Cal Water, Palos Verdes, and the city of Lomita. However, it's important to note that, again, like I mentioned, no water service will be shut down. Metropolitan staff has prepared outreach material to inform the local communities in this area. There was a flyer that was included in the memo as well. So for phase one of this rehabilitation project for Reach 3B is scheduled to be completed by May 2024. And the rehabilitation project will pick up again as phase two will begin in November 2024. And that will be scheduled to be complete by May 2025. And then the next item for the Sepulveda feeder switchover. Part of the Sepulveda feeder includes a service connection to West Basin that supplies water to the communities of Malibu, Topanga, and Marina del Rey. Excuse me. So earlier this year, Metropolitan performed an electromagnetic inspection of the Sepulveda feeder pipeline, and it had identified 3 segments that needed immediate repair. So that portion of the Sepulveda feeder needed to be shut down and drained so Metropolitan could reinforce the pipeline segment with the new lining. So in order to ensure continued deliveries in these communities, Metropolitan performed a switchover to change the service connection that would bring water supply from the Culver City feeder. So since the initial inspection identified necessary repairs, Metropolitan performed a significant amount of pre-planning efforts in order for this work to be completed as efficiently as possible. And again, West Basin staff were actively engaged with Metropolitan and also with all of the retail agencies in the Malibu and Topanga area to communicate the details of that work as they were performing it. And so then the next item regarding nitrification. So the Metropolitan Water District, their operations experienced a nitrification issue. And typically what's spurred these types of events are either long detention times, warm water, or dead-end configurations of the pipelines. So the past few months, the demands on Metropolitan system have been the lowest on record. and especially after the recent Tropical Hillary storm event. So as a result of all of this, Metropolitan was seeing an increased level of nitrates in the system in both Orange County and the West Basin service area. The Metropolitan increased their response activity to manage the nitrites in order to continue the chlorine residuals as the main disinfectant. Metropolitan operators have taken numerous actions in these affected areas, which included chemical modifications, blend changes at the treatment plants, flushing at multiple pipelines, and then also increasing the monitoring throughout the system. So they are past this event now. Metropolitan was able to respond with many system operators out in the field while monitoring the activities. Again, West Basin's operation team worked closely with Metropolitan in the areas that were affected by this issue. Metropolitan continued to provide weekly monitoring updates to West Basin, including our operation team, Uzi and Frank. So these efforts, and then also to continue the communication to the purveyors in that area. So I'll take a break and see if you have any questions or any comments. I know I provided a lot of updates on the operations. So are there any questions?
No, thank you.
I heard no thank you. Thank you, Tammy. I don't think there are any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll continue. So I'll talk now a little bit about the future supply actions funding program that Metropolitan will be making available. So Metropolitan, their board authorized a next round of funding for member agencies. And this will offer member agencies with additional funding opportunities for technical studies and pilot tests. And historically, West Basin has partnered with or participated in these studies with Metropolitan on several areas. So Metropolitan staff will be issuing a request for proposals within the coming weeks. And this item was presented to the West Basin Board of Directors during our recent caucus meeting on November 8th. So here, West Basin, the staff were currently reviewing potential options that could be submitted as a proposal to Metropolitan. We will continue monitoring this, and we will have more information for you as this further develops. And then next, on the next slide is the Climate Adaptation Master Plan for Water. So this process has started since the beginning of the calendar year, and Metropolitan is transitioning to a task force to continue further development of this program. And the task force will include the board members and member agency managers. And so this is in an effort for the member agency to participate in the planning and development of the overall process. So the chairman had announced at their board meeting that the general manager is working with all of the member agencies, and they're continuing this effort as they develop the task force. And we should have more information for you as this continues to develop in the coming months. And we'll bring that back to you.
And Tammy, if I could just add real quick, the first meeting of that task force will be taking place tomorrow. It's expected to be a lengthy meeting. And I wanted to also point out that one of our very own directors, Director Desi Alvarez, will be serving on that task force. Thank you.
Okay, so and then on the next slide, please, we'll talk about the board agenda look ahead. So this highlights a few key items that were discussed this month at Metropolitan. So during the One Water Stewardship Committee, Metropolitan staff provided an update on the revised supplemental draft environmental impact statement for amending the 2007 Colorado River guidelines. They had shared an overview of changes in the revised draft and proposed changes to operations of Lakes Mead and Powell through 2026. And as I mentioned earlier, they're going to be bringing back more information to the December board meeting that will be scheduled for December 5th. And then next, during the Finance Committee, the members had reviewed information provided by staff on the long-range finance plan needs assessment. And this included an overview of the process, the rate impact modeling analysis, and the capital financing consideration. The Metropolitan staff received input from the committee members. The members concurred with the initial report that was shared for planning purposes. And this item will be brought back to the board again in January. The information was also shared at the West Basin board members during the recent caucus meeting held on November 7th, just as a reminder. Next item, Metropolitan staff provided proposed legislative priorities and principles for 2024. This information was also shared with the member agencies. West Basin staff is currently reviewing this document as well. Metropolitan staff will bring this item back to the board for consideration in January. And then during the board meeting, the members welcomed a visit from Carla Nemeth. She's the director of the California Department of Water Resources. And Carla addressed the board on Governor Newsom's priorities for water policy and program initiatives. And also a press conference was held. Carla Nemeth presented a $38 million check to Metropolitan to support their water use efficiency initiatives. And then regarding December meeting, there will be a special board meeting on Tuesday, December 5th. All other committee meetings are canceled, and their next regular committee and board meetings will be on January 8th and 9th of 2024. And then lastly, I'll just wrap this up on the water supply update. So the final slide in the presentation packet shows the current graph for the water supply conditions that are tracked by Metropolitan, starting with October as a new water year. So for supply to the State Water Project last month, Metropolitan submitted their initial water supply order for 2024. And DWR should be announcing their initial allocation by December 1st. So for the Colorado River supplies, Metropolitan submitted their diversion request to reclamation. Metropolitan's request includes all water that would be available on Colorado River. It did not include water that is conserved under their fallowing program, because that will be included as federal funding. So since federal funding would support the Bard Irrigation District fallowing program, that conserved water would remain in Lake Mead, and so therefore it would not be included in a Metropolitan diversion request. So that wraps up a summary for Metropolitan items. I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any comments that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Are there any questions?
No, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. EJ, are there any other items?
Madam Chair, there are no closed session items today. And that brings us to item 8, director's comments and future agenda items.
Okay, thank you. Director's comments, Director Deere.
No comments, thank you.
Director Williams.
The only comment is that all water is good water.
Thank you, Director Williams. My comments, thank you to staff, always great reports, and to the general manager. Any future agenda items? General manager or any board members? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Hearing.
I don't, but I wanted to let you know, I will be working with our board secretary, and we will reach out to the entire board on those potential dates for Sacramento and Washington, D.C.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, and everyone, and happy Thanksgiving to staff and board members, everyone. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.